Apparently, finding your husband and your boss conducting a performance review in a car isn't what HR meant by after-hours team building. Who knew? I've always believed that timing is everything in marketing. Turns out, it's also everything when catching your husband cheating with your boss in the company car park at 10 p.m. on a Thursday. Talk about a premium content strategy. Premium Betrayal served in a Range Rover. Let me back up. I'm Eleanor Vance, an associate marketing director at Sterling Media Group. Or at least I was, before my entire professional and personal life collided in a corporate-sponsored fiasco that would make even the most dramatic TV movie look like a documentary. That night had been like any other in my 8-year marriage to David. We'd texted about dinner plans. He was working late on a big presentation. I'd stayed at the office, grinding through quarterly projections that my boss, Victoria Thorne, had dumped on me at 4:55 p.m. I finally headed home around 9:30, exhausted but satisfied with my work. Halfway home, I realized I'd left my phone on my desk. Annoying, but not earth-shattering. I turned around, drove back to our office park in the quiet outskirts of Reading, Berkshire, and pulled into the nearly empty car park. That's when I saw it. David's Range Rover parked in the far corner under a broken light. At first, I thought, how sweet. He came to surprise me with dinner. That delusion lasted approximately 2.5 seconds before I noticed the vehicle's rhythmic rocking motion. Berkshire isn't known for its earthquakes. As I approached, I could hear muffled sounds that definitely weren't business casual. My Italian leather heels clicked against the tarmac as I walked closer, each step bringing another piece of my life crashing down. Through the foggy window, I could make out my husband's head thrown back, and straddling him was a woman with the unmistakable blonde bob that had been terrorizing my professional existence for 3 years, Victoria Mercer, my direct supervisor, and the woman who'd been blocking my promotion with the excuse that I lacked leadership presence. Apparently, leadership presence was code for sleeping with the boss's husband. I should update my LinkedIn skills. I could have screamed. I could have cried. I could have ripped open the door and gone full Berkshire housewife rage mode. Instead, I did what 6 years of corporate culture had trained me to do. I knocked on the window professionally, like I was interrupting a meeting that had run long, and smiled my best client-facing smile. The look on their faces when the window rolled down? Priceless. If I hadn't been experiencing cardiac arrest disguised as calm, I might have taken a picture for our company's Candid Culture bulletin board. Please don't stop on my account, I said, my voice steady despite the Category 5 hurricane raging inside me. I just forgot my phone. But while we're all here, Victoria, should we discuss my performance review now, or would you prefer to finish performing with my husband first? David's face drained of color. Eleanor, this isn't what it looks like. I finished for him, honey, I'm in marketing. I know exactly what a product demonstration looks like. I just didn't realize you were the product, and Victoria was the target demographic. Victoria, still awkwardly positioned and fumbling with her blouse buttons, attempted to regain her authoritative tone. Eleanor, this is completely unprofessional. I actually laughed. It was the kind of laugh that makes people back away slowly. Unprofessional? You're literally on top of my husband in a company car park. Did you expense the condoms, too, or is that coming out of the office supply budget? I leaned in closer to the window. Please continue. I'm just going to run in and grab my phone. Then, tomorrow morning at the 9 a.m. staff meeting, we can discuss whether servicing the boss merits a raise, or if I should go straight to HR in the boardroom with the photos I'm about to take. Oh, and David, don't wait up. As I walked away, head high, legs somehow still working despite feeling like they'd turned to water cooler liquid, I heard the scrambling behind me, the hushed, urgent whispers, the car doors opening. I didn't look back. Marketing rule number 1, never let them see your desperation. In the lift up to our darkened office, I finally allowed myself a moment of truth. My reflection in the polished doors showed a woman I barely recognized, still put together in her smart suit and perfectly applied makeup, but with eyes that held the 1,000-yard stare of someone who'd just witnessed her life implode. "Congratulations, Eleanor," I whispered to myself as the lift dinged for the 12th floor. "You've just been promoted to main character in your own divorce story." I grabbed my phone from my desk, noticing the 3 missed calls from David, probably calling to say he'd be working late again. The irony would be delicious if it didn't taste like Betrayal and Victoria's overpriced Chanel perfume that always gave me a headache during budget meetings. As I walked back through the empty office, passing Victoria's corner office with its glass walls and motivational posters about integrity and teamwork, a strange calm washed over me. This wasn't just about my husband's infidelity or my boss's betrayal. This was about power. This was about respect. This was about the fact that for 3 years, I'd been passed over for promotion while Victoria had been passing my husband under her. By the time I reached my car, David's Range Rover was gone. My phone buzzed with texts from him. "It's not what you think. Please come home so we can talk." This was a huge mistake. I scrolled past them and called the one person I knew would understand the magnitude of this cluster-fluster, my best friend, Sarah, who happened to be a divorce solicitor specializing in high-conflict cases. "Sarah, it's me. You're not going to believe what just happened." "Try me," she answered, the sound of a crime drama playing in the background. Thursday nights are always when the crazy stuff goes down. I just caught David having sex with Victoria in the company car park. The TV muted immediately. "You caught David with your boss, Victoria?" "Holy Eleanor." "Yeah. And tomorrow we have the quarterly presentation to the entire executive team, including the CEO." There was a pause. Then Sarah said exactly what I needed to hear. "Well, honey, I guess it's time to lean in, as they say in corporate Britain. How can I help?" As I drove home, not to confront David, but to pack a bag and check into the Marriott for the night, I wasn't crying. I wasn't even sad, exactly. Instead, I was thinking about the presentation tomorrow, about the spreadsheets I'd prepared, about the contracts I'd reviewed between our marketing department and various vendors over the past year, including, interestingly enough, the surprisingly frequent and generously budgeted contracts with Vance Architectural Design, David's firm. Contracts that Victoria had personally approved, bypassing the usual bidding process because, as she'd explained to accounting, they were getting specialized service. Well, now I knew just how specialized that service was. By the time I checked into my hotel room, I wasn't plotting revenge. I was planning a strategy. In marketing, we call it a pivot. In real life, they call it scorched earth. I spent the night at the Marriott plotting my next move while David blew up my phone with the textbook cheater's playbook. It was a mistake. It only happened a few times. She came on to me. And my personal favorite, "I was thinking about you the whole time." Right? Because nothing says "I love my wife" like having your trousers around your ankles with her boss. By morning, I had 17 missed calls, 32 text messages, and 1 crystal-clear mission. I showered, put on my power suit, the crimson one that Victoria once said was a bit much for client meetings, and headed to Sterling Media Group for the 9 a.m. executive presentation with the composure of someone who hadn't just caught her husband playing hide the architectural blueprints with her direct supervisor. The reading office lobby was buzzing with the usual Friday morning energy, account executives hyped up on overpriced Starbucks, creative directors in their carefully calculated casual attire, and the executive assistants who actually ran the place exchanging knowing glances about which VP was nursing a hangover. As I walked towards the conference room, people greeted me normally, which confirmed that news of last night's car park performance hadn't made the company gossip Slack channel yet. That would change approximately 47 minutes from now. I rounded the corner to see Victoria standing outside the boardroom, looking immaculate in her designer suit, but with the unmistakable darting eyes of a woman wondering if she still had a career. When she spotted me, her expression cycled through surprise, fear, and finally settling on her default condescension with a side of corporate passive aggression. "Eleanor," she said with forced brightness, I wasn't sure you'd make it this morning. You seemed upset last night. I smiled with all the warmth of a New England winter. Victoria, I wouldn't miss this for the world. I've been preparing for it for months, though apparently not as thoroughly as you've been preparing with my husband. She lowered her voice to an urgent whisper. Look, we need to talk about this like adults. What happened was a performance issue, I suggested. Don't worry, I'm sure HR has a training module for that, probably calls it Boundaries in the Workplace or How Not to Mount Your Subordinate Spouse 101. The color drained from her professionally contoured face. Eleanor, please. This could ruin both of us. Both? I raised an eyebrow. That's funny, because I'm not the one who turned the company car park into a drive-in theater for adultery. Before she could respond, Mr. Thompson, our 61-year-old CEO, with his trademark bow tie and perpetually confused expression, approached us. Ladies, ready for the big presentation? The whole board is here today. Absolutely, Mr. Thompson, I beamed. I've prepared some materials I think will really open everyone's eyes. Victoria shot me a panicked look as we filed into the boardroom. The executive team and board members were settling in with their coffee and pastries, blissfully unaware they were about to get front-row seats to the corporate equivalent of a reality TV showdown. As we took our seats, my phone buzzed with a text from David. Please don't do anything you'll regret. I love you. We can fix this. I looked at his message and thought about the last 8 years of marriage, the house and reading we'd renovated together, the holidays with his parents, Margaret and Robert, who treated me like the daughter they never had, the decision to focus on our careers instead of having children, a choice we'd made together over wine on our 5th anniversary, agreeing that our ambitions needed space to grow. I texted back, you're right. Let's not make any hasty decisions we'll regret. Then I stood up and walked to the front of the room for my portion of the presentation. Good morning, everyone, I began, clicking to my first slide. Today, I'd like to discuss something critical to our company's integrity, vendor relationships and contract oversight. Victoria's coffee mug froze halfway to her lips. I continued with professional poise. As you know, Sterling Media Group works with dozens of vendors, but I've noticed some interesting patterns over the past 3 years that warrant closer examination. Click. A chart appeared showing the growth of contracts awarded to Vance Architectural Design, David's firm, which had mysteriously increased 347% since I'd been passed over for promotion in favor of Victoria. This particular vendor has received £1.2 million in contracts over the last 3 years, all approved directly by Director Mercer, bypassing our standard bidding process. The boardroom shifted uncomfortably as I clicked to the next slide, copies of emails between Victoria and David discussing meetings that coincided with late nights when both had told me they were working. What's particularly interesting is the pattern of communication between Director Mercer and this vendor, which suggests a relationship extending beyond professional boundaries. Mr. Thompson leaned forward, bow tie slightly askew. Eleanor, where exactly are you going with this? I smiled the smile of someone who'd found the receipt for her own replacement. I'm going toward transparency, Mr. Thompson. See, what happens in the dark eventually comes to light. Or, in this case, what happens in our company car park eventually makes its way to the boardroom. Victoria stood up so quickly her chair rolled backward into the wall. This is completely inappropriate and unprofessional. Interesting choice of words, I replied. Considering I found you straddling my husband in his car last night, right outside this building. The room erupted in gasps, followed by the awkward silence that only comes when highly paid executives realize they're witnessing something their conflict resolution training never covered. Mr. Thompson's mouth opened and closed like a fish thrown onto the deck of a boat. Is this accurate, Ms. Mercer? Victoria's face had achieved a shade of red previously unknown to the Pantone color system. This is a private matter that has no place in a business meeting. It stopped being private, I cut in, when you used company resources, company time, and company contracts to facilitate your affair with my husband. And it became very much the board's business when you awarded nearly exclusive contracts to his firm without competitive bidding, violating at least 6 company policies I can name off the top of my head. I clicked to my final slide, a comparison of my performance metrics versus Victoria's over the past 3 years, alongside the dates of my rejected promotion requests and the corresponding increases in contracts to David's firm. So, while I originally came here today to discuss our Q4 marketing strategy, I believe the board has more pressing governance concerns to address. I've prepared a comprehensive dossier for each of you, including all relevant emails, contract details, and a timeline of events. I distributed the folders I'd prepared at 3 a.m. in my hotel room. Also included is my formal complaint to HR, my updated CV, and my terms for not pursuing this matter through external channels, which would undoubtedly generate the kind of publicity our shareholders might find concerning. Mr. Thompson looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. Eleanor, perhaps we should discuss this privately. With all due respect, Mr. Thompson, handling things privately is how we ended up here. I'd prefer full transparency moving forward. I closed my laptop and gathered my materials. I'll be in my office if you need me. I believe Victoria can handle the rest of today's presentation, unless she's too busy handling other things. As I walked out, the boardroom exploded into urgent whispers. Through the glass walls, I could see Victoria gesticulating wildly, her perfect composure shattered like a dropped coffee mug on the office kitchen floor. My phone buzzed again. Another text from David, just talked to Victoria. What have you done? I smiled and typed, I've leaned in, honey. Isn't that what successful women are supposed to do? By lunchtime, the office was a war zone of whispers and side eyes. The HR director had taken up permanent residence in Mr. Thompson's office. Victoria had mysteriously taken the rest of the day off. And I sat at my desk, calmly updating my LinkedIn profile while fielding concerned texts from Sarah asking if I was doing okay and if I needed her to come down there with legal backup. The truth? I hadn't felt this okay in years. There's something clarifying about having your life implode. Suddenly, all those workplace microaggressions and marital red flags I'd been ignoring came into sharp focus. As the afternoon wore on, Mr. Thompson's assistant approached my desk with the careful demeanor of someone delivering a bomb. Ms. Vance, Mr. Thompson would like to see you in his office. I stood up, straightened my crimson blazer, and smiled. Perfect. I've been expecting his call. The best part of corporate catastrophes, they always end with a meeting. Mr. Thompson's office was the kind of space designed to intimidate, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Reading, awards displayed with calculated casualness, and furniture expensive enough to make you afraid to sit on it. Today, however, he was the one who looked intimidated, his bow tie askew and forehead glistening with the shine of executive panic. Eleanor, please sit down. He gestured to the chair across from his desk where our HR director, Ms. Patterson, sat with the practiced neutral expression of someone professionally trained to witness human disasters. I took my seat with the calm of a woman holding 4 aces. I assume this is about my presentation this morning? That was unconventional, Mr. Thompson said, searching for diplomatic phrasing. While the information you presented is deeply concerning, your method of delivery was effective. Direct, I offered, a masterclass in confronting workplace misconduct. Ms. Patterson cleared her throat. Ms. Vance, we take allegations of impropriety very seriously. The potential conflict of interest with Ms. Mercer's vendor relationships is particularly troubling. Almost as troubling as finding her testing my husband's structural integrity in our company car park, I replied pleasantly. Mr. Thompson winced. Yes. Well, about that personal aspect. While we sympathize with your situation, company policy typically separates personal matters from professional ones. I leaned forward. Mr. Thompson, let me save us all some time. There's nothing typically about this situation, and we both know it. Victoria used her position to direct contracts to my husband's firm while simultaneously blocking my advancement. That's not a personal matter. It's textbook corporate corruption. Ms. Patterson nodded, making notes. We've already begun reviewing the contracts and communications you provided. Preliminary findings are concerning. And Ms. Mercer? I asked, though I already knew the answer from the hushed phone calls I'd overheard through Mr. Thompson's assistant. Mr. Thompson sighed heavily. We've placed Victoria on administrative leave pending investigation. The board has requested an external audit of all vendor relationships under her supervision. I see, I said, allowing a moment of satisfaction to wash over me. Now, regarding your position, Mr. Thompson continued, the board was impressed by your thoroughness and, frankly, your restraint given the circumstances. I raised an eyebrow. My restraint? Eleanor, you had enough evidence to go straight to the press or file a lawsuit that would make our shareholders flee like the building was on fire. Instead, you brought it to us internally. That demonstrates a loyalty to Sterling that, quite frankly, we may not deserve. Now came the moment I'd been waiting for. I remained silent, letting the tension build like we do before revealing a major campaign to a client. Mr. Thompson shifted uncomfortably in his expensive chair. We'd like to offer you Victoria's position, effective immediately. And there it was. The promotion I'd been chasing for 3 years, finally within reach. The title, the corner office, the salary bump that would add another 0 to my annual bonus. Everything I'd worked for, delivered on a silver platter of corporate damage control. That's very generous, I replied carefully. And what about the contracts with my husband's firm? Ms. Patterson jumped in. Those will be suspended pending review, of course. We'll need to establish proper vendor protocols moving forward. I nodded, thinking about David, who'd sent 17 more increasingly desperate texts throughout the day, each one making my blood pressure climb another point. I appreciate the offer, Mr. Thompson. I'll need the weekend to consider it. His face registered surprise. He'd clearly expected me to jump at the opportunity. Of course, take the time you need, though the board would appreciate an answer by Monday morning. We need to stabilize the marketing department quickly. Understood. Is there anything else? Mr. Thompson exchanged glances with Ms. Patterson. Just. How are you doing, Eleanor? On a personal level, this can't be easy. I stood up, smoothing my skirt. I'm doing exactly as well as a woman who has been underestimated her entire career should be doing better than expected. As I left Mr. Thompson's office, my phone rang. David again. This time I answered. Eleanor, thank God. Please, we need to talk. We absolutely do, I cut him off, walking briskly toward the lift. I'll be home in 20 minutes. Be there. I am. I haven't left. Eleanor, I'm so sorry. Save it for when I can see your face, I said, hanging up as the lift doors closed. The drive home to our colonial-style house in the manicured subdivision felt surreal, like I was returning to a movie set rather than my actual life. 8 years of marriage, distilled down to a betrayal in a Range Rover. It was almost poetically awful. When I pulled into our driveway, I sat for a moment, studying the house David and I had lovingly renovated, the copper gutters he'd insisted on, the custom front door I'd designed, the garden where we'd hosted summer parties for his architecture clients and my corporate colleagues. David opened the front door before I could even reach for my keys, looking like he'd aged a decade overnight, unshaven, hair disheveled, wearing the same clothes from yesterday. Eleanor, he said, voice cracking. I don't even know where to start. Let's start with how long, I said, walking past him into the house. How long have you been sleeping with my boss? He followed me to the kitchen, where I methodically poured myself a glass of the expensive Cabernet we'd been saving for a special occasion. Finding out your husband is cheating with your boss while also committing corporate fraud seemed special enough. It wasn't planned, he stammered. It started about 2 years ago, after the Miller Building project. She approached me about doing more work for Sterling, and things just what, David? Just accidentally fell into an ongoing affair that conveniently lined your pockets with company contracts? Just happened to sleep with the one person who controlled my professional advancement? Just coincidentally betrayed every aspect of our marriage and my career simultaneously? I took a long sip of wine. That's quite the multitasking achievement. He sank into a kitchen chair, head in his hands. The contracts were legitimate work. My firm did everything. We billed for it twice the market rate without competitive bidding, I added. They've suspended all your contracts, by the way. External audit pending. His head snapped up, panic washing over his face. They can't do that. Those projects are half our annual revenue. And there it was. His first concern wasn't our marriage, but his bottom line. Sometimes people tell you exactly who they are if you just give them enough rope. Interesting priorities, David. Tell me, was screwing my boss worth screwing your business, too? He stood up, pacing the kitchen we'd remodeled last spring. This will ruin us, Eleanor. Not just me, us, our finances, our house, everything we've built. I set down my wine glass with deliberate care. They offered me Victoria's job today. David froze mid-pace. What? Director of Marketing, corner office, executive compensation package. Everything I've worked for these past 6 years. Relief washed over his face. That's great news, right? You take her position. I fix things with the contracts. We can move past this whole mess. I laughed, the sound echoing off our imported Italian tile backsplash. Wow. You really think it's that simple? That I just step into her job and forget I found you two playing hide the salami in our company car park? I made a terrible mistake, he pleaded. But we can fix this. Think about our future. Everything we've planned. I studied him, this man I'd loved, built a life with, trusted completely. Now I saw him clearly for perhaps the first time. Not the charming architect who'd swept me off my feet, but a calculating opportunist who'd leveraged our marriage for business advantage. Our future, I repeated slowly, an idea forming in my mind. Yes, let's talk about that. I reached for my phone, pulling up my calendar. You know what? You're right. We shouldn't make hasty decisions. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to Sarah's for the weekend. You're going to stay here and think about exactly what you want to say to me. And Monday morning, after I give Mr. Thompson my answer about the promotion, we'll talk. Relief flooded David's face. That sounds reasonable. I promise, Eleanor, I'll make this right. As I packed an overnight bag, David hovered anxiously. So, you'll accept the position? I zipped my bag closed. I'm considering all my options. And us? He asked, voice small. I looked at him, the man who'd shared my bed for 8 years while secretly sharing Victoria's as well. That depends on what I decide to do with the information I have. As I drove to Sarah's flat downtown, my mind was racing, not with grief or rage, but with crystal clear strategic planning. By the time I pulled into her driveway, I wasn't just considering Mr. Thompson's job offer. I was designing something much more satisfying. Sarah opened her door, took one look at my face, and handed me a glass of wine. You've got that look. What look? I asked, settling onto her sofa. The one that says someone's about to learn why they should have never underestimated you. She sat across from me. Spill it. What are you planning? I smiled, taking a sip of wine. Let's just say I found a unique opportunity for corporate restructuring. By Monday morning, Sarah and I had crafted a plan so beautifully vindictive that it bordered on art. I arrived at Sterling Media Group at 7:30 a.m., 2 hours before my scheduled meeting with Mr. Thompson, dressed in a navy power suit that I'd previously avoided because Victoria once commented it made me look too aggressive for client meetings. Today, aggressive was precisely the look I was going for. The office was eerily quiet without Victoria's usual morning parade of demands and micromanagement. I used the time to set up in the conference room, arranging materials with the precision of someone preparing for a surgical strike rather than a corporate meeting. At 9:25 a.m., 5 minutes before my appointment with Mr. Thompson, my phone buzzed with a text from David, "Good luck today. Call me as soon as you're done. I love you." I placed my phone face down without responding. Some messages didn't deserve acknowledgement, much like some husbands didn't deserve loyalty. At 9:30 sharp, Mr. Thompson entered with Ms. Patterson from HR and a man I recognized as Mark Reynolds, the company's external legal counsel. Interesting. They clearly expected this to be more than a standard job acceptance meeting. "Eleanor, good morning," Mr. Thompson said, his bow tie perfectly aligned today, a sure sign he'd prepared extensively. "Thank you for taking the weekend to consider our offer." "Of course," I smiled. "Though I've actually expanded my considerations beyond just the director position." Mark Reynolds raised an eyebrow but said nothing as they took their seats. I began distributing folders I'd prepared. "Before we discuss my decision, I'd like to walk you through some additional information I've compiled." Mr. Thompson exchanged worried glances with Ms. Patterson. "Additional information?" "Yes." While reviewing the documentation for the vendor relationships between Sterling and my husband's firm, I discovered some broader concerns. I clicked open my presentation. Specifically, I found that Victoria's preferential treatment wasn't limited to Vance architectural design. The first slide appeared, a network chart showing connections between several key vendors and members of the executive team. Lines connected Victoria to David's firm, but also showed the CFO's brother-in-law's consulting company, the COO's wife's catering business, and Mr. Thompson's son's digital marketing agency. As you can see, nepotism appears to be less of an exception and more of an unwritten policy at Sterling. Mark Reynolds leaned forward, legal radar clearly pinging. "Ms. Vance, these allegations are extremely serious." "They're not allegations, Mark. They're documented facts." I clicked to the next slide, showing a comparison of vendor rates versus market averages. Each of these connected vendors charges 30 to 50% above market rate, costing Sterling approximately £3.7 million in excess fees annually. Mr. Thompson's face had achieved a shade of red typically reserved for fire hydrants and stop signs. "Eleanor, this is highly inappropriate." "That's exactly what I said when I found my husband with my boss," I replied calmly. "But as you mentioned Friday, we need to separate personal issues from professional ones. This," I gestured to my presentation, "is purely a professional concern for corporate governance." Ms. Patterson looked physically ill. "How did you access all this financial data over the weekend?" I smiled. "I didn't need to. It was already in the files Victoria had me prepare for quarterly reviews over the past 3 years. I just needed to actually look at them without the distraction of, trusting my superiors." Mark was frantically taking notes. "Mr. Thompson, as counsel, I must advise." "One moment, Mark," Mr. Thompson interrupted, turning to me with newfound calculation in his eyes. "Eleanor, what exactly are you proposing here?" I closed my laptop. "I'm declining the Director of Marketing position." The room fell silent. Instead, I continued, "I'd like to propose the creation of a new role, Chief Compliance Officer, reporting directly to the board, with a mandate to restructure our vendor relationships, implement transparent bidding processes, and ensure ethical business practices." Mr. Thompson blinked rapidly, processing. "You want to become our corporate watchdog?" "I prefer ethics architect, but essentially, yes." I slid a document across the table. "Here's my proposed compensation package, reporting structure, and 3-year mandate." You'll notice it includes complete authority over vendor selection and a seat at the executive committee. This is extortion. Mr. Thompson sputtered. No, Mr. Thompson, this is corporate accountability. Extortion would be me taking these files to the FCA or the Financial Times. I smiled pleasantly, though those remain viable Plan B options. Mark whispered urgently in Mr. Thompson's ear while Miss Patterson looked like she was mentally updating her LinkedIn profile. We'll need to discuss this with the board, Mr. Thompson finally said. Of course, I've already requested a meeting for 2 p.m. today. They're expecting a full briefing on the vendor relationship irregularities I discovered. I gathered my materials. I thought it would be courteous to preview it with you first. Mr. Thompson's shoulders slumped in defeat. And what about personal matters? Your husband's firm? Vance Architectural Design will be permanently removed from our vendor list, along with any company connected to executives without proper disclosure and competitive bidding. I stood up. I believe in separating personal and professional concerns, after all. As I walked out of the conference room, leaving 3 shell-shocked executives behind, I felt the exhilarating lightness that comes with reclaiming your power. But the day's fireworks were just beginning. At noon, I texted David, meeting with the board at 2. Can we meet at Reading Brasserie at 5? Important news to discuss. His reply was immediate, absolutely. How did the meeting go? I didn't respond. Some surprises were best served in person. The board meeting went exactly as expected, initial outrage, followed by panic when they realized the legal exposure, culminating in unanimous approval of my new position, with even better terms than I'd proposed. Nothing motivates corporate ethics like the threat of public scandal and shareholder lawsuits. At 5 p.m. sharp, I arrived at Reading Brasserie, the upscale restaurant where David and I had celebrated our anniversaries. He was already there, nursing a scotch and looking simultaneously hopeful and terrified. Eleanor, he stood as I approached, attempting to kiss my cheek. I smoothly sidestepped, taking my seat. Thank you for coming, I said, signaling the waiter for a glass of champagne. David studied my expression. You seem happy. Did you accept the promotion? No, actually, I created an entirely new position. Chief Compliance Officer, reporting directly to the board. His face lit up. That's incredible. Even better than Director of Marketing. It is, I agreed. My first official act was to permanently ban Vance Architectural Design from all Sterling Media Group contracts. The color drained from his face. What? But that's nearly half our business. Was half your business, I corrected as my champagne arrived. Though I imagine that will be the least of your concerns once word gets around about why you lost those contracts. Eleanor, you can't do this, he whispered urgently. This is our livelihood. My livelihood, I clarified, which brings me to the second order of business. I reached into my bag and slid a folder across the table, divorce papers drafted by Sarah. You'll find the terms quite generous considering the circumstances. David stared at the folder like it might bite him. Divorce? But I thought we were going to work through this. We are working through it. This is simply the most efficient solution. I took a sip of champagne. Oh, and you should know that Victoria's husband received a similar set of papers this morning, along with documentation of your affair. His face contorted in panic. You told Ryan? No. Sarah did. Attorney-client privilege and all that. Though I believe his exact words were, I'm going to destroy that home-wrecking architect. I shrugged. Ryan's quite well connected in reading real estate development, isn't he? Such a shame. David's hands trembled as reality crashed down around him. This will ruin me professionally. Funny how sleeping with your wife's boss can have unintended consequences, I mused. Almost as if actions have repercussions. What do you want from me? He asked, voice hollow. I leaned forward. I want you to sign those papers, pack your things, and be out of our house by Friday. I want you to agree to my terms without a fight. And most of all, I want you to remember this moment the next time you think about betraying someone who trusted you." I stood, leaving my champagne untouched. "One last thing, I've frozen our joint accounts pending the divorce settlement. Your business accounts should remain operational, though I imagine they'll be rather quiet for the foreseeable future." As I walked away, he called after me. "Eleanor, please, we can fix this." I turned back with a smile that could freeze lava. "It is fixed, David, just not in the way you hoped." Outside the restaurant, I finally let myself exhale fully for the first time in days. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "How did Operation Architectural Destruction go?" I typed back, "Beautifully. The demolition is complete. Wine at your place tonight to celebrate." In the corporate world, they call it restructuring. In marriage, they call it divorce. But in the satisfaction department, I call it justice served with a side of career advancement. 6 months can change everything. Just ask my ex-husband, who now runs a one-man architectural consulting business from a studio apartment in Slough after most of Reading mysteriously decided they didn't need his services. Or ask my former boss, Victoria, who, according to LinkedIn, is now a self-employed marketing consultant, corporate code for unemployable after a scandal. As for me, the nameplate on my corner office door reads, Eleanor Vance, Chief Compliance Officer. A title that strikes fear into the hearts of nepotistic executives everywhere at Sterling Media Group. The company's ethics watchdog, Mr. Thompson, calls me with a nervous laugh whenever he introduces me to business partners. The way he tugs at his bow tie when I enter a room suggests he's still waiting for the other shoe to drop. Good. A healthy dose of paranoia does wonders for executive honesty. My first quarter in the role transformed Sterling's vendor relationships completely. We implemented transparent bidding processes, slashed inflated contracts, and redirected £2.3 million in savings toward employee benefits and bonuses. Turns out, corporate ethics can actually be profitable when you're not funneling cash to your relatives. The divorce was finalized last month, quick, clean, and devastating to David's side of the ledger. Sarah earned every penny of her legal fees, crafting a settlement that left me with the house, the investments, and a satisfying percentage of David's diminished future earnings. His attorney looked physically pained during the final signing. "You really shouldn't have slept with my boss," I told David as we left the courthouse. "But you really shouldn't have underestimated my ability to connect the dots." He had the broken look of a man who'd finally realized he'd self-destructed in spectacular fashion. "I never thought you'd go this far, Eleanor." "That was always your problem, David. Limited vision. For an architect, you never could see the big picture." Today, as I sit in my new office overlooking Reading's town center, I can't help but reflect on the peculiar equation of betrayal. How one night in a company car park unraveled 8 years of marriage, exposed years of corporate corruption, and completely recalibrated my life's trajectory. My phone chimes with a text from Sarah, "Singles mixer at Reading Country Club tonight. Half the eligible men in Berkshire will be there." I smile and decline politely. The last thing I need right now is another man underestimating me. Besides, I've developed a healthy skepticism about car parks after dark. My executive assistant knocks on my open door. "Ms. Vance, your 2 p.m. with the new marketing director is here. Send him in, Jessica." "And it's Eleanor, remember?" We abandoned the Ms./Mr. hierarchy along with the nepotism. Jessica grins. Old habits. Speaking of which, the company-wide ethics survey results came in. Highest satisfaction scores in Sterling's history. Nothing builds company morale like watching corrupt executives get their comeuppance, I reply as she heads back to her desk. The new marketing director, Garrett Fleming, enters with the cautious respect of someone who's heard all the stories about how I secured my position. Smart man. Fear mixed with professional admiration is my preferred management cocktail these days. Your proposal for the Williams campaign looks solid, I tell him after our meeting. Just make sure all the vendor selections go through proper channels. Absolutely, he nods vigorously. I've heard what happens when they don't. I smile. Just rumors, I'm sure. Very educational rumors, he says with a nervous laugh. After he leaves, I stand by my office window, watching the Sterling Media Group car park where my old life imploded 6 months ago, the same car park where, ironically, I now have a reserved space with my name on it. A small perk of executive status that amuses me daily. My phone rings. My mother-in-law, Margaret, ex-mother-in-law, technically, though she's made it clear the divorce was no reason to lose family ties. Eleanor, darling, just checking if we're still on for lunch Sunday. Robert is making his famous pot roast. Wouldn't miss it, Margaret. Some relationships survive even when marriages don't, especially when your in-laws secretly always thought their son married up. People often ask if I regret how things played out, the public exposure, the scorched earth approach, the professional and personal carnage I left in my wake. They wonder if I could have handled it more privately, more gently, with less collateral damage. My answer is always the same. Regret is a luxury afforded to those who make small mistakes. David and Victoria didn't make a small mistake in that car park. They orchestrated years of personal betrayal and professional corruption. They built an entire shadow structure of lies. And when an architectural framework is fundamentally flawed, you don't renovate. You demolish and rebuild from the foundation. So, no, I don't regret a single strategic move in what Mr. Thompson now nervously refers to as the Vance reckoning. Sometimes the most powerful response to betrayal isn't crying in a corner or seeking therapy. It's calculated, precision-guided consequences. The strangest part? I'm actually happier now. There's something clarifying about having your life detonated. It forces you to sort through the rubble and decide what's truly worth rebuilding. In my case, that didn't include a cheating husband or a toxic workplace hierarchy. Instead, I built something stronger, a life where no one underestimates me, a career where my value is unquestioned, and a future entirely of my own design. They say living well is the best revenge. I disagree. Living well while your enemies live poorly? Now, that's the premium package.